for value, right? It points in a capitalist dynamic. It points to it, my labor, actual and metaphorical and in many different senses. I don't want to get into that now. Points to the concept, that which is signified, and that which is signified in the Marxist sense is value, right? So my labor points to that value. But insofar as my labor points to that value, right? Insofar as my labor points to that value, then I recognize, as she says, the small peasant proprietor cannot represent themselves, right? They must be represented. So what does that mean? I'll give you a quick example to make sense of this, because I know it's complicated. The whole Walmart debate, right? Walmart, one of the allegations, one of the problems that people are having with Walmart and sort of its sort of dominant suburban monopoly is that you'll have a mom and pop shop, and I've written on this before, right? So you have a mom and pop shop, and they do bike repairs and they sell bikes. And right next to the mom and pop, think of a little strip mall, average American suburban strip mall, and you have a mom and pop shop, they sell bikes. Then you have a little specialty shop, and they sell, they sell clothes. Then you have you have all these little custom shops, right? And this is one thing I love, and I used to live in New York for years. This is one thing I miss in New York, because New York still gets it, right? They have all these little specialty shops where you go to a place to get cheese, and you go to the baker to get baked goods, and you go to the produce store to get fresh fruits and vegetables, and everything has their own specialty niche. Well, arguably, what Walmart has done is Walmart goes in to where the small proprietor exists and recognizes that the small proprietor has already carved out a niche, and that there is already within the community a demand for specialty bike goods. And Walmart recognizes, hey, we got tons of bikes that we can sell, and we can just consume all of the small proprietors' business. So what Walmart does is they just come in and they dominate. They set up this enormous conglomerate structure which has all of these compartmentalized quote-unquote specialty shops inside of the overarching mega structure, and they push out mom and pop spots. There is no sense in which the mom and pop shop has any means of being represented within. They really don't, and I don't know why no one's cried foul yet, but they really don't. There is no sense in which they can compete. They can't compete with the prices. They can compete with the service, right? They can't compete with the prices. They can't compete with the amount, the accessibility, the product, the inventory. All of that is bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger on the conglomerate level, right? There is no sense in which there's going to be any representation, right? So the only thing that can happen in this relationship when Walmart steps in and tries to take over the mom and pop business is like, hey, listen, we run it now, right? We're in charge. And you say, hey, what? Well, can't you please leave a little niche for me? But don't you see that leaving a niche for you is going to cut into my overall money? But you know what you can do? You know what you can do? You know what you can do? You can put it in an application. And I mean, it's just like that. It's just like that. So, and that's going to be deep on a number of levels when we really get into Spivak. So this has been a very long introduction. And again, this is not Spivak. These are all sort of important concepts that you need to have an understanding of prior to reading Spivak. Obviously, I make these videos for new scholars, young graduate students. I'm trying to help them understand and not have to go through, it took me years to really get what she's saying, and even when I'm reading it now, preparing for the lecture, I'm discovering more stuff because I've learned more stuff since the last time that I read it. So, if you're already a pretty steep scholar and this is all sort of rudimentary stuff, right, such is life. But for everybody else, and I know I've added stuff that no one's thought of because it's my interpretation. But primarily, my goal was to tell you that what she's really doing is she's trying to say, before I make my argument, make sure that you don't equivocate when I start using the terms, because I'm going to be very, very serious when I use my terms. When I say oppression and subaltern, don't get it confused, right? Oppression and subaltern are not one and the same. All subaltern are oppressed, but not all oppressed are subaltern. So if I say subaltern, I mean subaltern. If I say oppressed, I do not mean subaltern, right? If I'm saying oppressed, I mean oppressed. All right. Next thing is we can't equivocate on the idea of this notion of subjectivity, right? When I'm talking Spivak, when I'm talking about subjectivity, I do not mean subjectivity in the unified French post-structuralist sense, in which the relationship between desire and interest has been tidied up. I mean specifically subjectivity in the Marxist sense, in which there is no tidying up, because the condition for the possibility of my subjectivity is this dislocation between my desire and interest. And my, Jason Campbell's, sort of support or defense of that, the validity of that claim is one of accuracy. I've done videos on that already. Last thing is a recognition that when we're talking about representation, we need to be careful that we're not, again, equivocating in that word, in our use of that word. When we're talking about representation, do we mean political representation? Obviously, we immediately see that there's going to be some connection between representation as far as political representation as far as class consciousness, right? We know that there's going to be some relationship between the dislocation in class consciousness, representation, and then subjectivity. There has to be that account, and she will get that account once I actually start talking about what she's doing. And I'm going to be way quicker in that. I'm just sort of generalize quite a bit and sort of bunch things together, because, you know, I'm not going to spoon feed her discourse, but I do want to make sure that her discourse is clear. So, you know, the next section will be much, much shorter, and I won't spend too much more time on the subaltern speaking, but I wanted to make sure that that's account. And then the last sense of representation is representation. And this is sort of what philosophy is, what philosophers do, is we represent information, we represent concepts, we represent, like the artist represents work. And the example that I gave was one of what I classify as functional transformation. This is my phrase. Functional transformation in the Aristotelian sense, insofar as we recognize materially, physically, that a form is function, then there is a sense in which once the function changes, that we can transform the nature of that thing. The example I gave in a real sort of ghetto-style bootleg way was, all right, take a table, knock off the legs, flip it over, slide down. The table is no longer a table, it's a sled. I've transformed the thing by transforming the function. So there is a sense in which we can talk about representation on that sort of dualistic sense. So again, all of this was a very, very, I probably went into a little bit more detail than maybe I needed to in just giving you preliminary accounts of Spivak, but all of these are important if you were to even have any clue of what she's talking about in Can the Subaltern Speak. With that, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch my videos. I will continue the discourse on Spivak in a much more succinct, much more compact discourse on what she's actually doing in the paper. Thanks for watching my videos. I'm Dr. Jason J. Campbell. Have a good day.